Dan and I were looking at it, we're like, man, that joke is from the first draft.
Yeah,
which is really unheard, which is just, and that's not to toot our own horns. That's just, so many things have to go right for that to happen. So many things.
It's the Deadline Junkies Screenwriting Podcast with your hosts, Jordan Imiola, Kirsten Porter, and Rand Shami.
Your latest film, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, comes out in a few days. How did you both end up writing on that project?
You want me to take a little of this, Dan, and then you
go for it. Yeah.
Well, okay. I looked at what you guys do. It's really cool what you guys with Deadline Junkies do. I didn't know. So I imagine that this is a pretty specific group of people that listen to this as well. So just to take you behind the curtain a little bit, you know, we had been working for a little while. We had been on How I Met Your Mother. We were taking meetings, and you get to a place sometimes, if you're lucky enough to get to talk about open writing assignments, which are properties that different companies have the rights to, and they're like, we want to make a movie, and so that's one of them just happened to be the Rescue Rangers at Disney. We had a meeting, and initially, actually, Dan and I were not interested in meeting on it because we loved the Rescue Rangers, loved it growing up, but we were like, why would we? What would we be saying different about it? And to Disney's credit, and to Mandeville, the company that produced it, Todd Lieberman and Alex Young, they were like, just pitch us anything you want, and let's just see. And here's a little, Dan and I months before had gone in on a different open writing assignment, and we worked our asses off on breaking an entire movie
for the Hardy Boys.
We didn't get the job, and so this is out there to let people know that there's no work is for nothing. So then we were talking about it, and we were like, there's parts of that pitch that could fit quite nicely into Rescue Rangers, and they're telling us to bring us whatever you want. And so we made a pitch around some of the tentpoles that we had come up for the Hardy Boys, and then built a different story, and pitched it, and they liked it, and they paid us to write it, and that's how it came about. It was very unexpected. We couldn't believe they kept, in a business where you usually hear no, they kind of kept saying, do it, go for it, because it was kind of a property that had been dead, really. And
yeah, I mean look, I don't know where you got. I'm an old millennial, and I loved the Rescue Rangers growing up, and so I genuinely was.
The proper term is geriatric millennial.
That's offensive.
It's quite accurate, but it's offensive.
I just learned about this. I'm very excited of my new knowledge.
No, don't perpetuate that, please.
Right.
We're keeping that in here. We're not going to make that a thing.
A decrepillennial. And so yeah, so I was a fan of this, like, very much growing up. Like, I loved going to the parks, hugging Chip 'n Dale. But the real of it is, as adults, I imagine you guys probably maybe had this reaction the first time you heard about this movie, was like, really? Why? And like, there's not like an inherent need to make this a movie today. And that was the first thing we reacted to when we heard that they wanted to do this. We were like, okay. But we took that sort of feeling and that energy into our thought process about how to come up with a movie. And so the movie really is like based almost from the launching pad of like, does anyone need a Rescue Rangers reboot? The original title of the movie was the Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers reboot no one asked for. And so, it's deeply baked into the pitch and the premise of the movie that, like, it's that we're very aware that this is not this isn't Star Wars. Like, nobody's like dying for like the next iteration of
it's not Star Wars. It's better than Star Wars.
Oh
no, it's not.
Doug doesn't like Star Wars. Doug doesn't like Star Wars. We're just gonna get it out on the record.
What about Star Trek?
Star Trek's fine. Like Star Trek.
Nope, you're not really a Star fan.
It's not this. I'm not against stars. Okay. Anything in the constellation. I'm just I rebel against every writer's room we've ever been in Star Wars in the praying at the altar of Star Wars. That's what I have an issue with.
Okay.
No.
Thanks for clarifying.
Now, half of your listeners are like, well, fuck this guy.
Don't worry, we'll just bleep it out.
I saw Spaceballs before I saw Star Wars. So that also might have fucked with my head a little bit because I was like, well, what? This is just an unfunny Star Wars. It's just an unfunny Spaceballs. So, it's like, which is also blasphemy, I know, to people. I get Star Wars. I get it. I have dug myself in the fucking.
I'm still questioning if you're against stars because that's a space, not a star.
No. I'm totally not against stars. Yeah. I'm like, I guess I'd say I'm more pro stars than anything else.
Okay.
Doug hates Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's brutal.
I do not. I don't.
Hates him. Hates him. We're talking about it.
But back to the movie. We wrote this movie 7 years ago, too. So to give people a peek into this also, and it was dead many times, like most movies. And we, and not through anyone's fault, really, that it was just like, Disney was like, they really liked it, but they're like, is this movie going to get $150 million budget? Probably not. And again, to some of our producers' credit, they didn't let it die, and they showed it to Akiva Schaffer 3 years ago, our director, and he loved it. And he was like, I want to do this. And with that, it gave it new life. And
Disney Plus was created.
And Disney Plus existing.
And it's so all of a sudden it created a marketplace where in previous world, Disney, which is not just Disney, but also Pixar and Star Wars and Marvel, they have 52 slots a year for releasing movies. That's it really, theatrical movies. Now with Disney Plus, there's a lot more slots.
And a different range of budgets too. And a different range, and it doesn't have to necessarily, it can be a little more niche and so it really, that's the short history of it, but that was just a movie that we got paid to write. It helped get us other jobs, but we didn't, at a certain point, we never expected anything to happen with it. And you kind of have to do that. You have to kind of let go of things in a certain way and move on. But we always loved this script and we're really proud of it. And
has it changed over 7 years?
What's that?
Has it changed a lot?
Yeah. Was it the same years ago?
We've worked on so many movies where we'll come in the middle or the end, or like that's normal enough in terms of like rewrites and stuff. But this movie has certainly changed. If you read the original script, you'd be like, oh, that scene's not there and this scene's different or whatever. But it's still basically the same movie.
Which is also shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking. That never happened in studio filmmaking. And I got to give a lot of credit to Akiva, who was really just like got what we were going for, and the movie is he just made it better. He took what we had done and just made it better, and we collaborated with him. But the essence of that movie is what was on the page in the beginning, which is very rare, and we're really excited about. Dan and I were looking at it, and we're like, man, that joke is from the first draft.
Yeah,
which is really unheard. Which is just, and that's not to toot our own horns. That's just so many things have to go right for that to happen. So many things
over 7 years. Everything moves, and that's fine. Like it's fine for things to move and shift, especially once you hit production. You want things to improve and shift when you're like actually making the movie and you're editing the movie. Like, and in an animated movie where you can change your jokes a billion times. Well after actual physical production, there's no reason not to like keep honing. But to Akiva's credit, he was just very insistent on like protecting the things that were good and what worked, and
just made everything else better.
Yeah,
like significantly so. Like he really he was. I thank whatever you believe in every day. Thank God every day for Akiva Schaffer. He really came in and was just a dream to work with, and just got it and was so gracious with us too.
It was a real experience. Every time a star would be interested, the studio would say, oh, you've got to write a version just for this star. And they would say, write it, and they give me all the notes and I'd write the version for that star. And then the star would get the script and go, well, this isn't the script I liked. And we'd be on to the next star. It was a great schooling.
Wow. How many drafts do you think you wrote, and what was the inspiration?
I would say I wrote easily 30 or 40 drafts during that time. Every conceivable way it could go. But it was fun. It was a great way to, but then what happened was, and having said one day, well, let me write a movie, and I wrote a movie and it sold. So now I'm a screenwriter, but I don't know anything about screenwriting. So when people are talking to me about act structure and all of this, I'm like, I have no idea what they're saying.
So stepping away from TV shows, we're going to go to your screenwriter side and talk about the Hallmark movies. I just want to know real quick, because we haven't talked to anyone who does that, and that's such a specific genre, not just rom-com, but Hallmark. What is that like? I've heard they have strict rules on what you can and can't write. Is that true?
Yeah, I will say that nothing in my career has been harder than writing for Hallmark. And I keep on going back for more. Like, I just pitched them a new movie. So love you, Hallmark. I'll be interested if they buy this new one and they want to make it. It's really changing over there. So I don't want to disparage anyone or anything. Knowing, I mean, not that I would anyway, but when I first wrote for them, they had a very specific brand. And I think one of the things that makes them the most successful cable network is they know their brand and they know exactly what works for them. And but I remember I was getting this note over and over from the executive, I need you to age up the dialogue a little bit. It's too hip, it's too whatever, these are women in their 30s. And finally I was like, I am 35 and this is how I speak. I've taken every slang word out. I've taken I'm going to need you to point out on the page which the lines are bumpy, because I don't know what you're referencing. I feel like they're talking like Little House on the Prairie. And the example she gave me was I think it was when we broke up in college, she was like, at Hallmark, we don't say broke up. We say when we parted ways, when our lives moved in separate directions. And I was like, okay, because none of my 35-year-old friends talk like that, but I can do that. And it's interesting, they give you a list of rules at the beginning. No, if they're staying in the same location, you have to have on screen, to film on screen and air on screen, that they're going to different rooms. So it's very clear that there's no sleeping in an adjacent space. Just lots of stuff like that. No kissing until the end, usually. I've never had a network have such specific requirements, and
you should just write something that's different, and more importantly, write something that's yours. I think the best advice that anyone can have is fail early and often, write a bunch of bad scripts before you write the good ones, and then write something that you really believe in. It's really special and distinct. I think that's really important. Voice. I didn't read a tremendous amount of scripts before I kind of came to this town, because I saw myself more as a filmmaker. But I think, as Kurosawa would say, screenwriting is filmmaking. And so, as far as navigating that stuff, apply to the stuff you believe you can win. Don't spend your money on things that are just for the long shot. I will say the thing that really changed my life, not in a tangible way, but more in a spiritual way, was the Academy Nichols Screenwriting Fellowship. That was something that it's not tremendously expensive to apply to. I would argue, maybe someone's going to fight me on this, I would argue it's probably the one screenwriting competition that anyone can enter that matters. If you win that, it'll change your life, for sure. And you could just write a great script and submit it. And so in college, right when I graduated, I wrote a series of scripts with my roommate at the time. We just lived in this cave and just wrote movies, which is amazing. It's an amazing way to work. And we wrote 3 movies in 9 months. And one of those that we wrote, we submitted 2 scripts. I submitted one, he submitted the other, because we didn't want to pay the whole fee. We split it up. And we made it to the semifinals of the Nichols Screenwriting Fellowship, and I was 22 years old. And I remember making it that far to 150, script 150, out of 10,000 submissions. And we started getting like cold phone calls from agencies and Gersh and agents and people that really liked the script and were like, hey, I want to rep you. And my co-writer at the time wanted to direct the movie. We ended up not signing with Gersh. And I have to say, like, in the scheme of life, it probably worked out for the best, because maybe I wouldn't have written Eternals, in that same series. A lot of things had to go exactly right to find yourself in this position. And so for sure, that was a moment, though, when I got that phone call and I'm like, oh my God, I'm 22. I'm literally still shooting weddings for a living. But this agent from Hollywood is calling me and saying, like, I loved your script. Like, what's up with that? Like, how do we work together? And that was really a moment. It was a light bulb, where I'm like, oh, I'm good at this. And I know how to do this. And it's not just like me struggling in the dark, And I think so that's what screenplay competitions and festivals are great for. They really can give you that external validation, which never underestimate the power of external validation. I mean, like someone telling you, hey, like, you're really talented. You're like, oh, thank you. I'm going to like wear that. I'm going to lock it for the rest of my life. Like, those things matter. Like, give compliments to each other, lift up each other. And that's what I would also say is there's room at the top for everyone. I think there's this fallacy that like it's a dog eat dog, like cutthroat getting to the top of Hollywood. I found not only it to be the opposite, but I always embrace the opposite. I am always trying to lift up other writers and create community, because you are stronger together. Writers have a tremendous amount of power. You're the ones who generate everything. And most importantly, when you go out and you have a great idea for a script and another writer's reading your script and you're helping them and you both succeed, it makes you both more powerful. It makes you both succeed more. And I think it's also just more fun. It's way more fun to go on the ride with somebody else. So that would be my advice, is definitely, they do matter. Those awards things, they help in so many different ways, and you never know how they're going to help. But yeah, the most important thing is to write something good. And even your family, might be great feedback to read it and go, this is pretty good. Like, you should submit this. And also just to remember, it's never good the first time. And a great script takes, I don't know, 7, 9, 20, or 2 drafts, but it's never going to be like perfect at first pass, so do a couple passes and then submit it. You might change your life.
I've had horrible bosses, and each one of those horrible bosses was based on a real boss. And what I would actually do to while away the time was think about perfect murders for each of them.
Do any of them know that it's based off of them? Have they reached out and been like, hey, I saw your little movie and that was totally me?
They have not reached out, but they are extremely thinly disguised, so I'm sure they know.
You can find these podcast episodes in full on my website at www.jordanemiola.com.
Subscribe, rate, and review for more episodes. Thanks for watching the Deadline Junkie Screenwriting Podcast.